I'd like to call to order the April 8th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Hanson.
Here.
Brink.
Here.
Aletsky.
Here.
Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Spire. Culhane.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
And Dolly and Kays are absent. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Third item on the agenda is invitation for public comment submittal. So if there's anything not on the agenda that someone from the public would wish to talk about at the, there will be time at the end of the meeting. Please just let someone on the city staff know that you have an item. Fourth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion and a second? Or, thank you, approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion and a second?
Ford moves. Oletsky second.
Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Yep.
I can
Let's go. Ford.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Spire. Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 4th meeting. Could I get a motion and a second?
Ford moves with the correction.
Go ahead, Ford.
Do you want a second first, or should I just go ahead?
I think you should state your correction.
Okay. On page 5 of the whole packet, the 3 lines down, there's a misspelling, but it's striking part of the ordinance. So I think it's probably important that we change that word confirm to conform.
Good catch, Diana. Thank you for pointing that out. Staff will definitely make that change.
All right, we have a motion with a correction. Is there a second?
I'll second with the correction.
All right, could I get a roll call vote?
Hanson.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Spire.
Motion carries. Sixth item on the agenda is the irregular agenda. 6A is Valley View 3rd edition. It's commission consideration of resolution 2021-13 initiating annexation. Commission action on resolution 2021-14 establishing the zoning designations. And with that, I'll let Brandy take over.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Brink. So this is the annexation and zoning of Valley View 3rd edition. And as always with annexations and zonings, obviously we will take 2 actions on these separate items as they are separate resolutions. But we'll discuss them together and open the public hearing the one time just because they are completely related. So, like I said, the 3rd phase of the Valley View subdivision, the residential subdivision there north of 14th Ave and west of 2nd Street. And they are proposing, this is 56.3 acres that they will be annexing. And then as far as zoning, they will do a mixture of R1, single family residential, R2, single family attached residential, and R3, multifamily residential district. And some things to note. So they do have an effective preliminary plan that is effective until 2023. And this, you can see here, is the approved prelim plan. So everything, for the most part, is conforming to the layout that was approved. It's everything to the north of 18th Avenue, and then there are portions to the west of Grant Drive. And so, but the things that I wanted to bring to your attention of what differs from what was shown in the approved preliminary plan is these areas here. I'll zoom in, and this is included on the agendas, in the agenda packet. The hatched areas show where in the preliminary plan, they were showing or proposing this to be zoned R1, single family residential, in these 2 areas. And so now they are annexing and zoning it as R2. We've done this in the past with this southern portion that you can see that was brought in as R2, and it does provide nice transitional zoning. And so what they're wanting to do is just expand that footprint to this entire block. There is a street here, or a street, but it's 18th Avenue, that does separate the different zonings. So if if any lot was sold that was not shown to abut R2, there is separation there with the street, so it does create a nice separation point. And then down in this area also is R2. The only lot that really will abut the R2 zoning designation, if approved, from what was shown as R1 is this lot here. And I was in contact with that property owner just to make sure that if they had any concerns or whatnot, and they were okay with seeing the R2 zoning go in there. We'll look at other drainage aspects when we're looking at their construction plans as far as what the concerns were for that landowner. Other than that, park dedication has already been designated with the land along 14th Avenue there. That was platted during the first edition. So there's no park dedication to comply with this phase. And I think that covers it. So I'll open it up for, I'll just note too, this will come forward more so with the plat and development agreement, but also it does abut Second Street, so there's that cost recovery. But like I said, that'll be more of a plat topic. So I just saw that note real quick and jumped there. But yeah, all we're doing right now is annexing and zoning. One more point too is on this map that was sent out to the adjacent landowners within 250 feet, you can see that it appears that these lot lines will not match with the existing lot lines of River Ridge Estates. And that's a misrepresentation because they will match up. So there won't be that offset. So now with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Brandy. And did the city's design review team look at this, or did they not, since we've already done the preliminary plan?
That's correct. So the preliminary plan was approved, and that is reviewed by the design review team, but then they can bring an annexation and zoning forward from that.
Okay, thank you. And then like you've already kind of mentioned, the next step would be a plat, so I'd imagine that if this was approved, we'll see a plat in the near future.
Yep. Plat and development agreement with the infrastructure improvements that'll coincide with it.
Thank you. And I know there's a slight change from R1 to R2, but I always like to see the change before houses are developed. I think that's the appropriate time to do that. Right now there aren't anything adjacent to it because it hasn't been built out yet. So I think that was good foresight by the developer working with city staff on identifying those needs ahead of time. But I will open the public hearing. So if there's anyone to speak on behalf or against this item, please feel free to do so. Or if the staff has, or if the board has any questions for the staff, please feel free.
I would just like to make a comment. I think I made it before when it came before us, is I'm very frustrated to see that these two developments have no park. I do not, I guess it's extremely frustrating to me. How many lots are there between that one and River Ridge, and there is not one park in that whole northwest development?
Yes, and so there is land dedicated for the Valley View addition that could be developed as park, and I did reach out to Terry Kelly with Park and Rec and the director of Park and Rec, and he said that right now they're not planning on any playground equipment in the Valley View addition, but they are this year working to develop the River Ridge Park that was dedicated last year.
Yeah, we just platted the River Ridge one. It was about 7 months ago, I think.
Yeah, so that was 8 acres of parkland dedicated. So we have secured parkland, but now it'll just be a matter of that they have made that a priority to get that developed because it is important. There are a lot of residential lots in this area, so.
But on this one here along 14th Avenue, there's not a whole lot they can do with that, is there?
I mean, there's always some, like, you could bring in some fill if you did want a level area and not being, not really analyzing the topography. I mean, but they could bring fill in. It's not a floodway or anything if they did want to have some playground equipment, if that would be desirable, which I think it would be. The only thing, too, is that, you know, in this area, the Jefferson School is nearby. I know that's not. Yeah.
But my point is, our forefathers saw the value in a park in every development that went in prior, and now all of a sudden, we're finding that the lot is more important of a sale of $40,000 lot than it is to the future of the kids that play in that neighborhood. And I don't know why it would be so difficult to take 1 or 2 of those lots and designate it as a park, is my point.
Yeah.
So I just want to voice that, to go on record stating that point.
Yeah, and that, you know, in Valley View, we did have the parkland dedicated with the first edition, and that was the location that the park board had approved, and then subsequently the plan commission. So, I mean, it was reviewed, and
Yeah, I know it was, because I was here when we approved these, and I've stated it every meeting, and I will continue to state it until I falls on somebody who's listening to me. So that's all.
sounds good. Yeah, no,
This is Ford. I am equally as frustrated with the park situation. I find it hard to believe it will take a creative planner to do something along 14th Avenue with that essentially worthless land that is now dedicated as a park. I don't know how many people would want their children playing along 14th Avenue. I also am very frustrated with these requests that come before us that don't enhance the city at all. No one can convince me that 14th Avenue park dedication enhances the city, which is what zoning is all about, and annexation. It's an embarrassment to the city that we, and I was part of it, agreed to that. And I'm embarrassed for myself and for the city that we did that. And I'm also going to ring the park bell as loud and hard and with my vote as often as I can.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, just for clarity's sake, I sense what I'm hearing from a couple of planning commissioners is that there's a little bit of buyer's remorse maybe on some of the parkland that we ended up with through the park board actions and the planning commission actions. But I just wanted to make clear for the record that the subdivision as a whole does indeed meet the parkland dedication at this point. Is that correct, Brandy?
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that for my own confidence in moving forward here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments from the board or from the public? The public hearing is open.
I wanted to just make one more comment with that park as well. When we looked at this as the preliminary plan, they did show a rendering of like a trailhead for the bike trail and maybe like some parking areas. That is something that the Parks Board could look into maybe implementing. I mean, it is a nice open native area where, you know, people could utilize it. I get it. It's just not as accessible or I guess enhancing or enriching for children to go play. So thank you for your comments though, and I'll talk deeper with Terry Kelly on that and see if we can look at implementing maybe some play equipment.
maybe not so much the play equipment, but like if you want to, I'm a trail user. We use them all the time. And to get onto that trail, it's like, where do you park your car? You park it on the street and then you walk down, then you get on it and you keep going. You know,
Yeah.
there's things they could do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a nice trailhead where there's parking allowed, because there is access onto Grant here. And the one rendering in the preliminary plan did show a small parking lot that could go there, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you guys for stating that on the record. It's certainly something that we can reach back out and coordinate that with park staff and potentially even then Parks Board to see what the area could be and how it could be beneficial for this particular neighborhood.
Thank you. With that, I think I will close the public hearing. This item will be 2 votes. The first vote is 2021-13, which is the annexation. Could I get a motion and a second for that?
Make a motion to approve the annexation of 2021-13.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for the annexation. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Hanson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Dargits Johnson,
Yes.
Spire, Ford,
No.
Culhane.
Yes.
Just for the audio record, could you note Commissioner Spire did vote yes?
Yes, Spire said yes.
Just so it's on the audio record.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, Spire is texting in because his audio is not working on his computer. So he did vote yes, and with a vote of 6-1, the annexation is passed. Next item is the zoning resolution 2021-14. Could I get a motion and a second, please?
I'll again make a motion to approve resolution 2021-14.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the zoning designations? Hearing none. Oh,
Just,
Brandy was
I did
us.
pull up that rendition of the preliminary plan of that park, so, sorry.
Yep.
Ready for a roll call vote?
Yep, ready for a roll call vote.
All right. Ford,
Yes.
Culhane,
Yes.
Spire. And that was a yes. Spire votes yes. Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Did I skip Ford?
No, you got her first.
Okay, Hanson.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Item 6B on the regular agenda is commission consideration of resolution 2021-15 adopting a TIF within the city of Watertown. Brandy, could you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Brink. So this is TIF 14 for the Stony Point development that you have seen previously, and it was approved by the Plan Commission on August 6th, 2020, and then by the City Council on September 8th of 2020. The reason it's before you again today is because there was an error in the legal description. Very minor. It referenced section 27 instead of section 29. But that needs to be reapproved so that is correct. And then also just to point out that the eligible project costs were also updated as some of the real costs have actually already accrued that they've experienced some of the real costs already, and that they were higher than the estimate. So the project cost shown in the TIF plan does reflect that, just to be more accurate. And so with that, that is why TIF 14 is before you again today.
All right, thank you, Brandy. With the updated cost, we still are under our allowable limits for the city, correct?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I can pull that page up for everyone's reference.
I will go ahead and I will open the public hearing for this item. So if there's anyone that's here to speak in favor or against this, please feel free to do so.
So here you can see the City of Watertown current taxable value, and the TIF base value must be less than 10%. So, and we are at 7 million when we could go to 172 million. So,
Thank you, Brandy.
Mike Lawrence, I'm working with the developer out there. Yeah, we just ran into some items with COVID and things like that. Everything started to go up on us. We had to change some length of some steel to get some more tow to make sure that that marina was going to be sustainable. So those are some of the reasons that we're asking for the extra. The other thing was just a kind of a fat finger hit the wrong button kind of typo. So we figured if we were coming up here, and you know this is a self-funded TIF too as well. So Bob's funding the TIF, so it's not coming out of the city's coffers. So those are just kind of the reasons that we came up today.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board for Mike or the developer? Hearing none, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on behalf or against this item?
Mr. Chair, Brandy, could you pull the boundary up just for the record on the video there? As part of one of the actions, here's approving that boundary. I think it'd be good to show that.
yes, good
Thank you.
call. Thank you, Heath. So here is the TIF 14 boundary. You can see outlined in the red.
Thank you. And could you explain for everyone what exactly a TIF is and how it works and why the city does them? Or could you guys kind of give an overview on that? I know every time these come up, there's always kind of some questions on what it is and what it means.
You're supposed to ask that when Chris is here, or actually Michelle is here. I saw her back there. But I mean, I think a really brief summary is that it's a, oh my gosh, and I can't even think of the word. It's an economic development incentive, so that somebody is able. I don't even want to try.
I could take a jab at it. All right.
I don't want to misspeak.
Let the expert, the resident expert here, Michelle.
Is this on? Michelle Kakachik, Watertown Development Company. Tried to hide in the back, but didn't work. So basically, a TIF is an economic development financing tool that takes the increment of tax revenue after a development and devotes that for a period of time toward defraying the development costs. So it's one of the few and very effective tools we have in our toolbox to be able to fund some of those infrastructure costs for those programs or for those projects. So.
Thank you for that summary. I know we've been through this on this board. You know, we've been through a few of these, and every time it's always good for that refresher. So I do thank you.
Brandy, did you mention that there's something that was wrong with the legal description, like something big or something little?
No, it was just something minor, that it noted section 27 instead of section 29 in the section township range portion, so a matter of a number. So, but I mean, it's a big deal with the legal description, so that is why.
But they didn't add more acres or anything, or less acres, it's just a typographical error.
Yep.
Bob Drake.
Yeah. Mitch, can you put that overhead on?
I just thought I'd show you where we're at so far with the development. Can we zoom that down?
Yep.
So you can see by this diagram that the marina sheet steel is all in and it's all dug out. We still have to put the walkway around it. It's probably not coming down. There you go. Okay. And you can see the condo building going up on the one end. I just thought I'd just show you where we were in case you hadn't seen it.
Even Bob, if you just want to point that out with your hands too. I mean, they probably can see that, but if you, because then they can.
Okay, so the condo unit would be over here. Sorry, I cleaned some gutters, so
You weren't hand
my
mod.
hand kind of scratched it below. So the condo's over here. The marina entrance is here, comes on in and around.
how neat. Come on, let's do it if you want.
Bob, how deep is that?
We were out with a boat. It was what, 5 to 6.
5 to 6. There's some 10-foot spots.
So
If you want to use this as a pointer,
okay,
you can.
might be better than that ugly finger. So this shows you the close up from the south side. You can see the drainage pond that we put in. To collect all the water that runs off comes down here. You can see the marina in here. We've excavated back in here. And hauled. This still has to come down a bunch more. So it kind of shows where we're at on the process. So, and I thank you for all of your help that you've given us.
Yeah, thank you for showing those pictures. I know there's a lot of curiosity on what it looks like, and you know, it's hard to see because the only road in is under construction or closed to
Exactly.
public. So I appreciate you showing some photos of that.
And the TIF helps pay for the road and the kind of the infrastructure things when you come in, and that's why it's really important to help. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on behalf or against this item?
He just takes a few days after they pick him up to sleep at home, but they just have noticed he's just kind of sleepy and tired these last few days.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. My thoughts on this item are, you know, it was approved by us once, and this is a clerical mistake and an adjustment of the finances. And really, when it comes to the actual finances, I think that's ultimately up to the city council, which all of our decisions on the planning commission are up to the city council on whether or not what dollar amount they want. So in my opinion, I think that this is relatively the same TIF that we've already approved, and that's just my overall thoughts. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts they'd like to share.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I thought I had one piece that to note. I know Brandy had answered the question earlier about kind of where we are in relation to the total cap for tax increment districts in the city. But I would just note on this TIF in particular, even though there was an increase in the ask as far as the increment payout goes, it's still below, quite a bit below the anticipated increment that'll be generated over the 20-year life of the TIF. So it's still well within that dollar amount.
Thank you for that clarification. I'd ask the board for a motion and a second for discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Hanson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Valetsky,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Spire. Spire says yes. Ford,
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on, the agenda, item 6C is commission consideration of resolution 2021-12, zoning text amendment to chapter 21.80. Brandy, I'll let you take that over, please.
All right, thank you, Brink. And so this is the ordinance amendment addressing city identification and welcome signs, the number, dimensions, and locations of individual signs and maximum total sign area by zoning district. So if you guys remember last year, specifically March 19th, this ordinance amendment was brought before you, and it was approved 6-1 at that time. And we had prior discussion at different points trying to figure out how to handle this sort of amendment. So this, as it states, is for strictly city signage. It would just be for your gateway signage, the welcome to Watertown type of situation, where it would not have a commercial message. It would be just the welcoming aspect. So same thing, it didn't change. I just thought that since there was the year time lapse, obviously with it being mid-March there, that priorities changed. So this just kind of fell by the wayside. And so now we would like to bring it back. Like I talked about, we're working with a donor and some of the H2O 2020 subcommittee members on updating the Welcome to Watertown sign out at the interstate, but also would consider other locations such as out at the lake or just other gateways north on Highway 81 or south on Highway 81 for future projects potentially, if that was something that we wanted to look into. So how we found it most appropriate was is treating it kind of as its own because it is the municipality and there would not be a commercial message conveyed. So there's the footnote as K, and it states that city identification welcome signs that do not convey a commercial message and are located on municipally owned property are allowed one sign per frontage with no minimum frontage requirement, a maximum area of 2,000 square feet, and a maximum height of 30 feet in any zoning district. And so also, if you remember the no vote, K's had concerns about residential districts and if they would be adjacent, a large sign would be adjacent to a residential district, which the prime example was the west sign out on Highway 20 for the lake, that is zoned residential. So obviously that would all be taken into consideration as far as the sign would not to be disruptive, I guess, or not aesthetically pleasing for a residential neighborhood.
Thank you for that introduction. It's one thing where if, it's a sign that we only allow on city property and done by the city, so I had less concerns then at that time too about, it going in a bad place or a place that people wouldn't want it. And so I appreciate you putting it into ordinance and making it something that's could be official. So.
But the one out by the lake, isn't it on the same lot as the water tower?
It could be, but it would be on city-owned property.
Yeah, it's on city-owned property. It's zoned R1, but there aren't homes like right next door to it. They're across the road.
Right.
South Lake Drive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's near the right-of-way, so.
I think they're really important, and I wish we would put them on every road as you're coming into town to say hi.
Yeah, they're definitely nice.
And I will open the public hearing if there is anyone here to speak in favor or against this item.
This is Ford. Could I ask a couple questions?
Go for it.
Thanks. I really appreciate the staff putting these comments in here where Mr. Kays gave his explanations as to why he voted no. And you explained that first one a little bit, a large sign being installed within R1 single-family residential districts. So is there any other specific location where, do you recall where specifically was he worried that this might occur? where would a sign go that would be in a residential district?
Mr. Chairman.
I think if you come in on 81 from the north side of town, you're coming in into residential. That one, I believe, was discussed at that time.
Is there city-owned property out there where a sign could go, or would it end up being in a residential district?
At this time, it doesn't appear that there is city property. So that would have to most likely be pushed out further to the north. And then potentially, once you get further up to this intersection of 26th and 4th, that would trend to be commercial. And this would be a commercial node. So no, there's no location today where a sign would go near a residential neighborhood on that north side of 81.
No, there isn't any city-owned right now, but I know that was what was discussed then is, you know, if the city happened to get parkland or something that was, you know, that would be residentially zoned, being that it's around other houses, that's where we could potentially put a sign and it would be on city property and around a residential. So that was what the discussion was at that time.
All right, and then he also stated not prohibiting the welcome sign from certain districts. Which districts did he want it prohibited from?
Residential.
Oh, just all the residential districts.
Yep.
All right. And then my only other question, and perhaps you can help me understand how this would work. In the actual K paragraph, one sign per frontage with no minimum frontage. I always wonder if down the road we'll regret not putting limits or parameters on something. And is no minimum frontage really what we want?
Well,
it's so wide open for a little time. I mean, it's just so wide open. There's just nothing there that gives anybody, if they have an issue with it, a reason to protest that or to express a concern. When it's no minimum frontage, you're just wiped out.
And I think the idea behind that is that, you know, some of these city lots, we might not know the size of them. You know, if a developer comes in and wants to develop, we have minimum lot sizes. But if the city's going to own property, such as for a drainage area, or, you know, there's going to be a detention pond, we might not have a minimum lot size. And I think that's probably part of why we did that. But I do see your point, and we could make that amendment. But we just don't know what our minimum lot size would be necessarily.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, if I could expand on that, I think that you're exactly right. The varying shapes and realities of the property configurations that the city may end up with, either what we currently own or what we may end up owning in the future, could vary drastically. So it might be considered, I don't know if arbitrary is the right word, but it might be considered arbitrary to set a minimum frontage for that city property in order for us to have the ability to put a gateway sign on it. I think is why we left it open-ended as we did. It gives us that flexibility because it could be an awkward trapezoidal shaped piece of land where you've only got 10 feet of frontage, but it opens up as you get further back away from the roadway to maybe a 100-foot wide piece of property for some odd reason. You know, we may end up with something weird like that because of the drainage lots and tracks and H lots and things like that the city can sometimes end up owning and maintaining. I would also say, just as far as in relation to the discussion on where these might go, you know, I would agree as you go north on 81, that's a prime location. I think that was one of those that Commissioner Kays was concerned about. We don't currently own land up there now, but I would say it's not uncommon for communities to keep those things in mind as development progresses in certain directions on those gateway arterials, so that they keep that in mind through the development approval processes. They may ask for a little bit wider right-of-way at an intersection or a small piece of land to configure something like a gateway sign in those locations. If they're thinking ahead and planning ahead, I would say that's pretty common to see that.
So I certainly understand and see the point of an oddly shaped lot. I guess I'm just concerned about no minimum. It just struck me as a curiosity. So who exactly is in charge of these signs? Who decides where they'll go, how big they'll be, where they're going to go?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that that's, at least in the recent past, it's been a group effort. Some of the community members donating funds and wanting to see an upgrade to the current Welcome to Watertown sign out by the interstate has been a group effort that Brandy's been part of as a city staff representative. And I would guess that would continue to be the case. As far as the maintenance goes, it's usually a street division, maybe a park and rec division as far as who's mowing around them, maintaining them, and things like that. But the deciding factors on where they go and what they look like, I would say that would probably continue to be some type of a committee of community members and staff members to make sure that, you know, the staff, of course, would be there to make sure the regulations are being followed and it's getting laid out and designed in a proper way that meets our regulations. And then, of course, the community involvement in the funding agencies behind the sign or whatever that might look like would, of course, continue to be involved in those discussions as well.
Or
So my question is, who signs off on it? There must be one person that's responsible for saying, I've approved this, and here's my signature. Who is that person?
Yes, so I was going to add there too that ultimately it would be the city council's decision because it would be going on city property. So, you know, staff would work with the committee on, and whoever was looking at donating funds, or if somebody just had the design and had the funds and wanted to present it to council. But, I mean, it is a big community decision because you would want all of your gateways to coordinate. So that would ultimately be the city council.
So that's what I wanted to know. There's the city council, that's where the buck stops, is at the city council. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Hearing nothing from the public, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We had discussion about making a minimum. Do we want to just approve it as is, or that's how our motion currently is, or do we want to do a minimum, or do we want to have that discussion a little bit more, or maybe we don't?
As is.
So the motion and second is to approve the ordinance as written. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Dargits Johnson.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Spire says yes. Culhane.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 7 on the agenda is open public comment. Brandy, did we receive any? No. Okay. Item 8 is new business. 8A is a presentation of Harmony Hill concept plan.
Yes, and just to address with the group here, and I had talked with Mark a little bit about that whole open public comment and that there was going to be a large group here for this item. And if anybody wanted to state anything, perhaps after we have the presentation, they could do that. I do want to caution that we limit it though, just because it's not a public hearing for this item, and I'll explain kind of why. You know, it's not typical that we have concept plans before you. We've done it before. This is a large development, so I want to make sure that we're adhering to the open meeting laws too. So with that, let me grab the plan. All right. So this is the presentation of the Harmony Hill concept plan. And again, this is not typical being before the Plan Commission as new business, but it is a very large development on the southeast side of town, or southwest side of town, I'll say. It is the Mother of God Monastery and the Benedictine Sisters. Oh my gosh, Benedict. Why can't I say that? Benedictine Sisters. Oh my gosh, it's been a day. So this is the concept plan we've been working on with the group. And so you'll see, as you know, where the monastery is today. That is shown in this location where it's shown PUD in the purple. But you can see too along Highway 81 and 20th Avenue South, the bypass there, and then coming along 7th Street West or County Road 11. So looking at a mixture of the PUD, which they would come forward with their PUD plans for at a later date after the concept plan would be approved or in conjunction, and then also some combinations of residential development, so the single family and multifamily, and then also rural residential with larger lots there to the south. So a nice mixture for residential uses there. And then with commercial abutting the major collectors there. So also good transition zoning into this development. And with that, I think that I'll invite any spokesperson to come up, and I believe it's Sister Barb, and I'll let her state her name for the record as well. And she'll just give a brief presentation of their vision.
Good evening. I'm here with Sister Terry, the prioress of the Benedictine Sisters of Watertown, to talk with you about what we've been working on for the last several years. For the last 3 years, the Sisters of Mother of God Monastery have been in the process of planning a meaningful and long-lasting legacy to the people of Watertown and our surrounding area. Our property is known as Harmony Hill, hence the Harmony Hill Watertown Project. It's been our home for more than 60 years, and we're so glad it has been our home. We've served the people of South Dakota and beyond, some in South America and other places around the world. Major service has been the ministries of healthcare and education. In the sunset years of our lives, we have recommitted our resources to the people of northeastern South Dakota by reimagining healthcare and education in the following ways. First, we intend to build a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art senior living and elder care community that offers the latest and safest living options in a post-COVID era. On that PUD, right in front of the monastery, the first piece that would be developed is an assisted living and memory care and hospice care facility. I should say community, not facility. It's a community. It will be like nothing else in South Dakota. The design of this senior living community is intentional, and it will employ an exemplary model of holistic living that promotes the dignity, freedom, and wellness of its residents and staff members. We all know that in the COVID pandemic, staff have worked their fingers through the bone in almost every way conceivable across the nation and the world. So we are very much highlighting how staff fit into this picture. The whole campus promises to be a unique intergenerational community experience for seniors, students, and youngsters. So how can an elder care village become the departure point for a unique intergenerational synergistic community in Watertown? I'll give you 4 examples. First, by building and then providing housing and services for veterans. Sioux Falls just announced a tiny home village down in Sioux Falls. Well, we're going to be a lot larger than tiny homes up here. And their services, some of whom would need elder care services, would fit right into the other parts of the campus. Number 2, we will donate 27 acres of our land as the site for the future Challenger Learning Center of South Dakota, the only one in the state. This comes to us by way of collaborating with the best two-year college in the nation, Lake Area Tech. In addition to that collaboration on the Challenger site, which will have a park of 24 acres with the tagline "From the Prairie to the Stars," we have been commissioned to receive a Voyage Mark II scale solar, model of the solar system, and it will be woven throughout that park, the Virgin Prairie Parkland. In addition to that collaboration with Lake Area Tech, we are going to provide student housing for students in the allied healthcare disciplines at Lake Area. So that would be occupational therapy, the new LPN program, cosmetology, and other disciplines that interface with healthcare. And then last, but not the least, we're going to develop workforce housing. I know from my friends who are in the housing business, houses aren't staying on the market more than 24 hours. And so people need a place to live. I can't imagine trying to be a young family trying to buy their first house with this market. They get bought out. So we want to make a difference there. So we planned a single family residence. We've also planned pre-retirement twin homes so that grandma and grandpa are right there on the hill. We also want to do rural residential lots in the southwestern part of the property. Currently, we're working with Austin Engineering, Hoffman Planning and Design out of Appleton, Wisconsin, and many other people in our area to make this plan move forward. Later this month, we'll ask you if the approval for Harmony Hill can go forward. We very much want to take this step with this window of opportunity that's open, with the collaboration that's happened, and the things that keep emerging literally every day, for partnerships, for the betterment of the people of Watertown, for a new cutting-edge healthcare system in Watertown. We will continue to explore and expand other possibilities as they emerge and hope that there are businesses and others whose vision and mission align with ours. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. That's a very unique and in-depth plan. I was happy to hear it, so thank you.
It will be nice. And I do want to thank Brandy and Stacy and Heath. You've been on lots and lots of phone calls with us and Zoom meetings, and Terry Kelly in the Parks Board was amazing. And so thank you for affirming our vision, working with us. I think you see the goodness of this. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I believe a couple of the design professionals are here tonight and would maybe like to speak or talk through some of the details of the concept plan. And like Brandy indicated, it's not common that we bring a concept plan to the commission before the formal submittal of it for approval. But again, given the scope and magnitude of this one, there were a handful of design components. We thought it was a good idea to walk through with the board ahead of time before they consider formal approval of it. So with that, I'd defer to the design professionals as they may want to speak to those design components as they've got it laid out.
Go ahead. Thank you. My name is Mark Bolke. I'm with Hoffman Planning and Design in Appleton, Wisconsin. You may ask why I'm here tonight. It's because we have been working with the sisters for several years. Our company works on we work on all types of projects, but we have a unique situation that we work with women religious communities all over the country. We've worked with over 50 communities all over the country, and so our mission fit with women religious is very strong. So we had the privilege of getting involved several years ago in some initial planning and have been brought back in recently in the last 6 months to assist the sisters with their vision and dream for the property. I must say, I've been doing this for 40 years, and this is probably the most exciting project I've worked on. It's really the passion and the excitement behind this is incredible, and you're fortunate to have the sisters here. Also, I've met some wonderful people involved, some leaders in the community and others that want to be involved in this project, and the enthusiasm is infectious. So I could sit here and talk for a couple hours on a 500-acre master plan, and I'd love to do that, but I won't do that. I understand this is the first time you've all seen this, so what I wanted to do is just kind of walk through the plan for just a few minutes and then give you just some background, and then you'll have the opportunity to, and we appreciate the time tonight. We thought this was a big enough project where we requested that we could just come before you to present the plan with no action tonight, with that understanding. And we'd like to, I guess, just introduce you to the plan because it's a lot to take in a short period of time. So our goal tonight is just to inform you, answer any questions. I'm here representing planning, design, and construction management for now. Austin Engineering is involved right now, and we're assembling an additional consultants and contractors and things like that for what will be a great team to help this move forward and to work with all of you. So we've been working with staff. I must say also the staff here has been extremely responsive. It's very rare that I work with a city staff and we're having phone calls till 6 or 6:30 in the evening. So we appreciate that. You've been very open and responsive to our needs. So we submitted this plan in February, and there's been review by staff. We've received comments. Most of the comments are, we feel, fairly expected. There were just a few issues that really came to the forefront that we really are still working on, and our intent is to work. The plan that you see tonight will be modified slightly in response to those comments, and we're going to resubmit it and hopefully come back to you. Well, not hopefully, we intend to come back on April 22nd, and with hopefully an approval recommendation for approval from staff, and hopefully we can have a great public hearing, and you can hear more about the project at that time. And we would ask for your approval. And the real goal here is, as Sister Barb mentioned, is to begin this elder community. And because the sisters own this huge piece of property, to follow your protocol, we really needed to prepare a concept for the entire 500 acres. As you all know, 500 acres, we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen when and where, but we do know what we want to happen immediately, and that's to start this year on the elder community. So that's really the priority. The rest of this is conceptual, with every intent of developing it as closely as we can predict right now. So that's really our intent. So the issues, and I'll ask Brandy or Heath to step into it on any of these, but we've really gotten it down to several issues that are key. One of them, there was discussion about parks. The sisters have, in their being, care for Mother Earth is extremely important. And we've had the privilege, like I said, working with so many congregations, and that's one of the wonderful things is they really want to take care of what's there. And if they do want to develop it, it's in a very sensitive way, sensitive to the land, sensitive to the environment, and sensitive to the community. So Parks was mentioned. That was one issue. We met with Parks, and the initial plan, if you can pull up that one there. So the initial plan, we didn't define public parks yet. What's public, what's private. What we did define is we started to look at the land there, and the development of the land is going to be sensitive to what's there. Sister Barb mentioned the Virgin Prairie area, which is that 25.6 acre. It's called Park Green Space. That we would like to, the sisters would like to preserve that area and enhance it with some of the things having to do with the Challenger Center, but also it would be more of a passive park area with trails and things like that. But certainly open to the public, even if it's not owned publicly. And then the other large green spaces that we showed on the plan initially really are to respect the existing drainage system and the creek. I don't know if it's classified as an official creek, but yeah, today it is. But we want to respect the natural drainage on the property. So we'd like to, some of that will be restricted by codes, because some of it will be classified as wetlands or stream. But we'd like to leave area around that to create a trail system and a park system. Again, we haven't worked out exactly what's public and what's private yet. What we do know is those areas will be green space of some sort. And then in our meetings with the parks, with Parks Department, we did talk about, we specified a couple of areas that they felt were appropriate for, I'll call them official public parks, which would probably have more typical play areas and things like that for residents within the development or anybody in the community, because they would be public parks. So we identified, yeah, that's the plan. We identified 3 areas. So those are, I'll call them potential public park areas, and we all agreed those are potentially great locations for those. And our intent is to continue to meet with Parks and staff, the rest of your staff, to fine-tune the park system, the trail system, and exactly what would happen in those park areas and who owns and maintains them. Another issue that we talked about was annexation. We didn't quite know, because again it's such a large piece of property, how to predict what was going to be absolutely in the city or what might remain outside of the city. So we had suggested initially a city, county, or city limit line on the property. That by no means, it doesn't mean that the rest of the property couldn't at some point be in the city. So what we've talked to staff about is, as far as the concept plan, we really probably can just eliminate that line on the plan, with the understanding that we don't know exactly when land would come into the city, other than on our phasing plan, we do want to annex that phase. There's parts of that first phase, if you can go to the phasing plan. Next one, there you go, thank you. So the only thing on this plan that's really critical is phase 1. The rest of it, phase 2, 3, 4, we wanted to put some organization to the plan, but if phase 4, if there's a market to develop phase 4 first, that could happen sooner than phase 2 or 3. We just don't know yet, but what we do know is phase 1, we do want to start on, we want to start to develop that private park. We want to start to develop the elder community, and we want to start that this year. So our intent is hopefully to get a concept approved through you, and then actually start on the detail plans for phase 1 immediately, like April 23rd, if not before. That's really, and as we move forward, we'll bring all those details to you. We want to work on the public streets. There's another issue on the plan that we had talked to engineering about, your typical requirements for collector streets, and we didn't quite meet the typical requirement. So we're working on that. I think we've got some solutions that we talked about as late as today. And we're going to hopefully meet with you tomorrow and talk about those. So some of those things will be changed a little bit on the plan, but I think we're headed in a good direction together. And then utilities, we're at concept plan level. We understand that if there's lift stations needed or booster pumps or things like that, we will work through those with you and with staff and make that happen. Right now, there's utilities adequate to serve what we're considering for phase one. But then the overall, as it continues, we'll put together a complete utility plan for the entire property, and it will be phased in as development occurs. That was really, I think, in my mind, those were the key issues that needed to be addressed. There's the long list, but I would say 90% of those are expected to be addressed at a preliminary plan level when we get into the more detailed planning. So I think that's all I have. We are available for questions, and I think if you would indulge us, there are some people here that are extremely passionate about this project. Some of them can't be at subsequent meetings. They'll keep it brief, but they would like to just take a moment to speak, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Courtney. I'm going to talk to you from a number of different hats on. My first one is a private citizen in Watertown. I want you to notice that the passion and the reason for this is not monetary gain. It's for the sisters to leave a legacy and a gift to Watertown. And being a lifelong resident of Watertown, just that speaks volumes for the motivation behind this. Second hat I'm going to put on is that as the chairman and president of the South Dakota Challenger Learning Center 501c3. And that's a group of folks that have been working for since 2018 to bring a Challenger Center to South Dakota. This is the area that the sisters have offered us, and we're looking very hard at that. But we have some steps to finish our process. But when you mix this, what you're going to see is that this not only provides an exceptional, makes Watertown world-class in healthcare, it'll make Watertown world-class in education of our students also. Providing support, there are 30,000 K-12 students within 90 miles of Watertown that would be able to take advantage should the Challenger Center be here. The third hat is I'm also the chairman of the Watertown Sea of Goodwill, which provides, our motto is serving those who serve. So the veterans that are supported by this plan, it's a sorely needed support for them. We have over 8,000 veterans approximately in Cottington County, and that population needs this kind of support. So there's four hats that I have versus a private citizen. I couldn't think of a better gift to Watertown and to this community and better motivation for doing a project like this. Again, as a Challenger Center, a home for that will make Watertown world-class for our K-12 and college students. And then again, as the Sea of Goodwill chairman for our veterans. So thank you.
Thank you.
Randy. Joy Nelson. I've been working with the sisters here for several months, maybe 9 months, Sister Barb. And having been in the development game for like 30 years, in this town, I don't believe that I've ever seen a more creative, beautiful, comprehensive development than the development that you're looking here. It is so intergenerational and serves so many quality of life issues for Watertown, in addition to coming to us at a time when, being in the real estate business, Watertown desperately needs all the types of zoning that are components of this development. So it's been an absolute honor to work with these sisters, and I'm going to continue to do so. And we are blessed to have them in our community. And Michael Cartney said it best when he said that the motive here is not monetary gain; it's to give back to the city of Watertown. And so, it's a monumental development, and so I'm hoping we can get this moving along just as fast as we possibly can. So, thank you.
My name is Greg Klein. I'm from the aviation department at Lake Area Tech. When Mike was up here, he said he was wearing 4 hats, and I only heard him mention 3. So I'm here to represent Lake Area Tech on Mike's behalf. And I'm very excited about this Challenger Center. I mean, this whole project is very generous, and we're so excited that the sisters are putting this forth. And the Challenger Center is going to be an amazing thing for Watertown. It's going to be world class. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. This is a very cool and unique concept, and I'm glad you guys did bring it before us today to let us see this. And like you said, it's letting us see something different. I mean, you know, usually we see lots laid out where you get as many as you can, and this is cool. So thank you guys for this presentation.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add some clarity and maybe get a little bit of feedback, if appropriate, from the board. One of the reasons staff felt it was important to bring us before the planning commissioners was to just give a general update and look at the layout. Of course, this is an outstanding project. A lot of great things going into this, nearly a full section of land. Of course, staff were commissioned with throwing the regulations at the folks, or outlining them or explaining them, and I hope the day I meet my maker, I'm not held to a higher level of scrutiny for this particular project. But just for discussion's sake, we just wanted to point out a few things so that they don't catch you off guard at the next meeting when this is before you for approval. One of those things was the transportation network that Mark alluded to, and it sounds like he's working on some solutions there. But as you may or may not know, the comprehensive land use plan gives us some guidelines on where our collector streets should be ran as we expand the city limits. In this situation, you know, again, call this a full section. They would typically be ran at the half mile or the quarter section lines as far as the collector streets are concerned. This layout that was before you tonight, obviously you'll see that they kind of meet that in some quadrants, but not so much in the other quadrants. I think it's fair to say that the terrain of this land prohibits some of that connectivity, and we've kind of pushed Mark and Colin from Austin to try and make it work a little better on the south end than what it's showing. So that was one of the concerns that we had, because as this section is annexed and develops, of course, we're looking ahead to what's next after that, and how's that going to connect from a transportation network standpoint. So those are some critical components that we just wanted to be sensitive to, and that was one of them. The other one that Mark also mentioned was the annexation boundary. Leaving out that southwest quadrant as initially proposed was a concern of the design review team. We felt that might cause a pocket of county land that, again, if somebody to the south wanted to eventually develop, we'd have that hurdle to deal with, that pocket of county land that would then be a gap in our congruent annexation process. So, or that contiguous annexation process. So that was a concern of ours too, that again, Mark has alluded to, that it sounds like, you know, they're willing to work with from a conceptual plan level and adjust that annexation boundary as far as the concept plan is concerned. The last thing I wanted to note and emphasize too, that we're working with the design team on is phase one is the critical component here. We've committed to the sisters to expedite as much as we can on the city staff level and begin that review and approval of the phase one, the PUD area, as timely as possible. Of course, they don't want to get too far down that path of the PUD area, Phase 1 planning and design, until we get this concept plan checked off for good reason. We don't want things shown in this concept plan that are in that particular area to not be approved, and then they have to go back to the drawing board, not only on the concept plan, but also on the Phase 1 plan. So we're being very sensitive to that and laying out timelines where things can maybe run parallel with each other and keep the time clock moving in a way that is meeting the sisters' goals as far as groundbreaking and things like that are concerned. So with that being said, I just wanted to highlight those few things and how we're working through them. And if the board has any comments, suggestions, feedback for their design team, please feel free to express that tonight or for the city staff. And our hope was to avoid as many changes or corrections at the meeting the night of the approval, avoid as many of those as possible, I guess is what I'm getting at. And I know that's a little bit awkward position to put the board in tonight, but by no means don't take that the wrong way. I'm just trying to drum up some discussion. If anything jumps out at you, feel free to share that with us tonight, and we'll help facilitate.
Just one other thing, if I could, and Brandy, please correct me if I don't get all of these steps. In terms of, it is a complex project, as you guys know, so I'd start with the concept plan, which will be brought forth at the next meeting. Also, annexation and zoning, that would be coming, I believe, right on the heels, as well as preliminary plan. And then back to the Parks Board as well. And then at the final plat level, that's more when we're going to get into the actual infrastructure. But there are a number of things that do need to take place, and I believe Brandy has a kind of a timeline worked out for that. So just wanted to note that we'll see a number of different things in relation to this development, different types of applications and such.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Stacy and Heath. And just to add too, that there will be a PUD plan that would have to come forward. Some of that property already is annexed and zoned as A1 agricultural district. So there will be some portions that you can kind of see on the outline that will have to be annexed and zoned, and then some portions rezoned. So we'll work through all of that. But as Stacy said, those are all things that you'll look forward to seeing at future meetings, and to keep progressing with this.
Well, I have a concern. I don't think there's enough park. I'm kidding. I do, and I don't want any response. I don't want any answers. I'm just throwing the things that I'm going to say that night, because that's what I do. Are you having trail or sidewalk system? I think it's fitting for a trail out there. And then the other concern I would have is the 28th coming in. We have one way going in there now, and when I go out there, I'm a terrible driver, so it's not very wide. So that's the other concern. As you're going to start this phase, obviously you need to get in, and now you're going to rip up the only road that goes in. So I don't know if that other road is something that is going to be to the second phase. Anyway, those will be my questions.
It'll be the first phase that they will put in Challenger Way.
Okay, all right. So you would have two ways in right away, so that's awesome. Okay, so those are the two things that I noticed if you want feedback, so, and more park. Oh.
Great, thank you, Rhonda.
Is there any other comments that the board would like to make at this time? Feel free.
This is going to be so nice. I know with my mom and stuff, the seniors, I'm glad that that's one of your first phases, because as you guys know too, that's really a need too out there.
All right. Yeah, thank you to the sisters and Mark and Colin for coming forward tonight, and yeah, the whole team, and presenting that concept plan. And like I said, we'll continue to work through the details and keep the project moving forward. So with that, thanks, guys. 8 a.m.? All right, we can make her work.
Not 7:30, Mark?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Moving on the agenda is item 8B. It's discussion on bar or tavern definitions. Brandy.
All right. Let me get back to that portion.
It's so weird being on this side.
Yes, and as you can see, Councilman Hoyer has joined me as we're bringing this forward just as new business for discussion. Councilwoman Manti and Councilman Hoyer have been discussing this, and it's just something that wanted to bring forward. So you can see there in the agenda that I did include some information as far as the background. And I guess, honestly, if you kind of want me to go through that, Michael, and then
Sure.
do you? Okay. So basically, in ordinance today, and it's kind of been past practice for the Board of Adjustment when somebody comes forward, let's say a grocery store, a convenience store, and when they ask for the conditional use for the bar or tavern, that we traditionally ask that there's a separate entrance and whatnot, so that there would be separation that way. There isn't anything technically in ordinance that that prohibits that or requires that, I guess is actually the better way to say it. So the definition for bar or tavern, and I don't know if so bar or tavern, any establishment, including restaurants and gambling establishments, licensed to sell alcoholic beverages for consumption under the premise where sold or provided. The term bar or tavern shall also include establishments licensed to sell alcoholic beverages for consumption off the premise where sold. So the definition for bar or tavern includes on sale and off sale. Obviously, both still needing approval by the city council for the license issuance, but it does create, it's a little arbitrary as far as what we are granting when we're granting a bar or tavern conditional use. Somebody could come in and have the intention to have, to be selling off sale, and then really, I mean, it could turn into a bar without further review. So we were looking at potentially striking the off sale language from that definition, and then allowing the off sale or the sale of alcoholic beverages to be handled as through retail establishments, which in many districts is a permitted use, but that it would just be another good that you would get at one of those establishments. And again, the off-sale license would still need to be granted by city council, but there's benefits to it as far as the differentiating between the definition. I mean, we combine them, and it's on sale and off sale, so that leaves it arbitrary. But I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Hoyer if he wants to add anything to my ramble there.
Sure. So a lot of this, the genesis kind of came from just trying to understand what our current ordinances were surrounding our historic, or just our history of Watertown prohibiting, I guess, off sale of beer, wine, what have you, in grocery stores, gas stations, et cetera, like many other communities in South Dakota do. And then understanding that that's actually not an ordinance or anything. That's just a practice that we've followed. That led me to bumping into the bar tavern conditional use. What struck me about it was the part we're trying to kind of strike out here. The term bar or tavern shall also include establishments licensed to sell alcoholic beverage for consumption off premises were sold. To me, when reading that, that's a little confusing. I actually had to get clarification from city attorney as to what that meant, really. So if somebody was just a liquor store, for instance, they would still need to get a bar tavern, but they're not a bar, and they're not a tavern. So it just kind of seemed like a lack of clarity within that conditional use. I could understand some of the intent behind it, I think, You know, when we're fearful about the location of where alcohol is going to be sold, a lot of that is the worry that, you know, there might be intoxicated people in inappropriate places where we wouldn't expect to see them. Well, when you go to a liquor store, you don't see that person or that individual. Typically, they're not consuming on premise or anything, so it just seemed mildly inappropriate to be calling that a bar or a tavern, I guess. The ambiguity that Brandy brings up, I don't think most of our liquor stores realize that because they carry the bar tavern conditional use, they could technically put taps in and just start serving beer and wine if they wanted to, as it's currently written. Matt, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong on that. With the on-sale license, because as of right now, how we have it, they're combined. So you get an on-sale, off-sale. They're together.
Just a clarification there. The liquor stores, most of them, or probably all of them, just have an off-sale license. So off-sale for hard liquor is a standalone license. What's combined now is the on-off-sale beer, wine, and malt beverage. So the off-sale locations cannot just start serving on sale unless they also have an on sale, off sale beer, wine license.
Thank you, Matt, for that clarification. And I should have clarified that up front, too, that I'm just talking about beer and wine with this because we did differentiate it with liquor. And that does bring up, you know, if an establishment like that did want to still do on sale in some way, like, I don't know, or off sale, a lot of times you see that with locations that let you, you know, buy beer to take with you. You'd still get that with an off sale. We're combined right now, so you automatically get that just with the on sale, off sale, and you're already a bar tavern. So some of our restaurants in town do that. I know for the breweries that we utilize that. But I guess for me, it was a disconnect of if somewhere such as a gas station or a grocery store, what have you, had decided that, hey, I just want to sell beer, wine, they would have to go get a bar tavern license, even if they have no intent of being on sale and never wanted to be on sale at all. So more than anything, this is a language cleanup. If we are worried about the location aspect of it, that's already covered just with the on sale, off sale malt beverage. If you read that in the third paragraph, it kind of explains it, that it can't be located within 100 yards of the locations you would kind of expect. It's just something that I guess struck me, and our practice with it is a little strange, it seems to me, when compared to other communities of our size and just within the state in general. So I thought it was worth just getting the ball rolling on a discussion about it and how we feel about it.
Mr. Chair, if I might here, these are excellent points to consider. And from a land use perspective, are they the same thing? Is a liquor store and or beer and wine sales for off-premise consumption the same thing as a bar or tavern? Looking at it in terms of impacts, and with our conditional use process being, would a bar tavern fit in this particular location? Are there any screening measures? That type of thing. Is it right next to residential? All of those things. So I think that too, kind of steering back to the land use component on it, in terms of selling something for off-sale consumption, seems to be more of a retail, at least in my mind, but we're wanting to get the board's input on that versus having a bar tavern, which could and will indeed probably have hours that run late into the night, potentially more traffic, potentially all of the things that come with a bar tavern, and also concerts, events, things of that nature. So just wanted to throw that out there from a land use component to keep that in mind when considering this.
Yeah, thank you for that. So is the intent, if we change this, would be to allow a place like Walmart to sell beer and wine? Is that where this is going, or is this not?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you finish, Jeff.
No, I was just gonna start rambling.
No, hey, me too. Not necessarily. Can they do that and come forward for an on-sale, off-sale? I mean, they could. If they went an on-sale route, they'd have to go get a bar tavern. It would still come before the board, that kind of thing. If somebody was just pursuing our off-sale, like any of our big boxes, yes, it would not come before the Board of Adjustment, but it would still go before council for review either way. So there is still that measure where if they were pursuing that, for me, it's just eliminating an extra step that just didn't seem appropriate from use, I guess. I guess I kind of view it as you buy tobacco anywhere because it's a product. You can buy CBD pretty much anywhere. It's a product, even though some of these are controlled substances, some aren't. But for whatever reason, we treat alcohol in this form differently when it's just a packaged good, if it's not being consumed there.
So what you want to do is be able to, like, you go to like Brookings and stuff, where you can go inside a convenience store, open up the door and pull out your 12-pack of beer. Is that what you want to be able to do?
Well, in Watertown, you can already do that. You would just have to get a bar tavern conditional use, and then it's just an extra step. It's just historically we've said no as boards and councils. But there's no ordinance that prevents that currently.
Chair,
Go ahead.
2 comments. First, these seem like 2 separate distinct uses, so I think this is a great idea to split and differentiate them, right? I mean, a bar is different than where I go to, buy a 6-pack of beer or a 12-pack of beer, something like that. It makes total sense to differentiate between the 2. Secondly, I think we should, if the discussion slides over to that, whether or not we should allow gas stations to sell beer, 6-packs, something like that. I don't see anything wrong with that. It seems like an odd distinction, the way that we do it. I've lived other places, been other places where you can go grab a 6-pack at the Casey's or whatever, and it just seems like an odd, unnecessary distinction that we've taken, and I think is probably a vestige of strange liquor laws that are, historically related.
This is Ford.
Go ahead, Diana.
I totally agree with Liam. It's time to move ahead, change what's just archaic, and recognize the times.
Yeah, and I think people on this side of the table are agreeing too. I see a lot of heads bobbling, myself included. So I appreciate Councilman bringing this forward to us, and I think it's something that we would address as a board.
Okay.
Yeah, one more comment back.
Glenn Vilhauer, member of the City Council. I was here for the sisters presentation as long as I'm sitting in this. I do have one question. I'm losing something here. You alluded to it, Brandy. Maybe it's self-explanatory. This would then eliminate the need for a separate entrance. I know we made Casey's do that a number of years ago. When Target came before us a few years ago, we said they could do it if they had a separate entrance for, to enter into that area. So this would eliminate that need to do that. Is that what I'm understanding if we were to go through this change?
Do you want to answer that? Otherwise.
Yeah, so this, again, I guess to reiterate what Councilman Hoyer has said, essentially what the councils have historically done is not been required by law. So as we sit today without changing a thing in ordinance, if Target were to come forward and make the same request they've made in the past, the council could go ahead and approve them to sell beer right inside of Target. It's just historically we've never done that. And so all this will do is remove the requirement that a purely off-sale establishment, whether that's off-sale in a grocery store or gas station or standalone liquor store, remove the requirement that they get the bar tavern conditional use.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it has never been required to have that separate entrance, but that is true that when Casey's came before the board, probably a couple years ago now, that was one of the conditions. And so, but that's just been tradition, I guess. There is nothing in ordinance that requires that.
No, except for that bar tavern is listed as a conditional use, so any conditional use we have the right of conditions. So that's, we haven't been, we've imposed those conditions, we just haven't had to, but we have.
Yes, good point, Jeff.
Well, and I would just toss onto that. In the event that those are a bar and a tavern, totally makes sense. 100% to have a separate entrance in those situations. It's just if we adopt the mindset that this is just a retail product, that eliminates that, and just like what the rest of the state does.
We're getting thumbs up.
All right.
Liam's on screen, so no, I appreciate that, and I think we're, good with moving forward on that with a future meeting with an actual ordinance amendment. It just seems like we were all in agreement that does make sense, that there is a difference between drinking it on site and buying it to use later. I mean, that's.
Thanks, Rhonda. Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
You guys can look forward to seeing an ordinance amendment coming forward after we fine tune it, so.
Sounds good. Is there any other new business?
No, none that I have.
Okay, any that the board has?
I'll just mention quickly that you will likely see a list of cleaned up goals at the next meeting. So thank you to those of you that did go on and make comments on the priorities. I just need to get all that data organized now and present it back to the board. So we'll be seeing that next time. So just so you know.
Sounds good. Moving on to item 9, old business. 9A is discussion on the proposed zoning text amendments pertaining to kennels. Brandy?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. And actually, if I'm done enough talking tonight, if Matt wants to take this one over, as he's been spearheading this effort and working in conjunction with the Plan Commission and the Park Board, and if he wants to show you, kind of where it's landed so far.
Yeah, I'll tell you, never did I think I'd learn so much about kennels and the number of dogs that are allowed in municipalities and such when I was in law school. So it's been fun. So let's see, what you have in front of you, I'm just trying to pull it up here, is kind of, I guess just to start from the beginning a bit, just as a refresher. So I end up working quite a bit with the Animal Control Board. And I don't know, some 6 months ago maybe, it was identified that there was some language in the zoning ordinance related to the definition of a kennel, which could be construed or is essentially a limitation on the number of dogs that somebody can own unless they have a conditional use in the ag zone. So essentially, right now in the zoning ordinance, it defines kennel. One of the definitions of kennel is to own 3 or more dogs, and therefore, if you look at the zones where the word kennel is stated, it's only is a conditional use in the ag zone. So, long story short, the Animal Control Board thought, okay, well, let's we disagree with that. We don't think that if it's in fact true that you can't have more than 2 dogs unless you have a conditional use in the ag zone, we want to propose a change to that. And so we put together a subcommittee, a couple of members of the Plan Commission, a couple of members of the Animal Control Board, to kind of look at this and come forward with a recommendation. And I'm having trouble pulling it up on my screen. Hold on just a second here.
Matt, can you see the screen that I have shared?
Keep clicking on, hold on just a second. Okay, there it is. Oh, yeah, so essentially what the proposal in front of you is proposing, I guess, is to remove the definition of kennel from the animal control ordinance, to eliminate, there's a reference there to applicable setbacks for dog kennels or dog houses, to basically eliminate that rule from the animal control ordinance and eliminate it altogether. And then basically put a definition in the animal control ordinance, not a definition, a rule. It's just a flat out rule that says you can't have more than 5 dogs over the age of 4 months. in the city. And then it goes on to make the amendments that you folks would have to approve, which would be to redefine the word kennel as a commercial kennel in the definition of kennel in the zoning ordinance, to tweak that definition some, and then state that it can be approved as a conditional use in the ag zone and a conditional use in the C3 zone and the conditional use in the I1 zone. So that's kind of a quick overview of where we landed on that. Is there any initial thoughts as to what what's been proposed here?
So you want to keep it so that they cannot have more than 5 dogs per household, correct?
Correct. And there was some back and forth about maybe allowing for an appeal process. You know, if somebody wanted to have more than 5 for whatever reason, they could come forward to the animal control board and ask for a special permission. And then the question was, well, whether or not that maybe should be a land use that's more of a land use. So should that come through the Board of Adjustment? At the end of the day, the proposal in front of you just nixes that idea and just says, hey, you can't have more than 5 dogs in the city of Watertown, unless, of course, you're operating under a commercial kennel conditional use, which would be folks that are, you know, maybe operating a boarding facility, or there's also the exception in there for veterinarians and our animal shelter and that sort of thing. So, but other than that, you just can't own more than 5 animals in the city unless you're operating under one of those other conditions. And so, you know, to that point, you know, there may be folks you might know today that have more than 5 dogs, and you know, I guess I would remind the board that, you know, a lot of our ordinances more or less are complaint based, and so, you know, it's not the case. I wouldn't suspect that if and when this passes through the city council that we're going to be out knocking on doors. It's more for us to have a tool where if there is some issues with somebody with a plethora of animals at their house, that this would be a tool we could use to cite them potentially.
Does this include cats and birds and any other type of animal they would have?
The way it's proposed right now, it's limited to only dogs, but other communities, it is typically you see in other communities, it's a broader net, so it'll say dogs, cats, or other household pets, with the exclusion of fish and reptiles or something like that. But just for the for purposes of moving this forward, we left it to just dogs at this time.
Is there any ordinance concerning chickens?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
there is.
Were you?
Go ahead, Brandy.
Oh, I was going to see if you wanted to elaborate on that. I can pull it up here because it's in the animal control board section of the ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Or the animal control section.
Yep. So here's let's see here.
Chickens are allowed, aren't they?
The keeping of domestic fowl, which would include chickens, shall be by special permission of the animal control board. And then that's a simple, straightforward sentence in the ordinance. And then the animal control board has ended up adopting basically an application that the animal control officer kind of administratively utilizes for folks that want to have chickens. And if they want more than, I believe it's 6 or 9, I can't remember on the application, and they do come forward to ask the permission of the animal control board.
I have a quick question. This is Stacy. It looks to me as this is written now, so there would be not more than 5 dogs would be allowed unless you have this commercial kennel. Now, would that be a complaint base that would go to the animal control officer? It looks like to me. versus like code enforcement? I just want to make that clarification to make sure, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the way it's written right now, it'd be a violation of the animal control ordinance, and so I think that I know that would fall on the animal control officer. Now, if somebody was, so I think in the case where somebody just owns 6, 7, 8 dogs, that would certainly be the animal control officer. Now, if we discover somebody's running a boarding operation and doesn't have like a commercial boarding operation and doesn't have that conditional use, then I think that would end up being a zoning code enforcement issue.
Thank you.
This is Ford. Did the committee at all run any of these proposals by the animal control officer to get his feedback on things?
He's been invited to be a part of our meetings, but he has missed the last couple of animal control board meetings. So I don't know if he's seen this latest proposal, but I think he's generally okay with kind of what we're trying to do here. Okay. Is there something that you see that's concerning?
No, I just was looking to see, how broad your input was. So that's great that you involved him. I personally am struggling with this no more than 5. I personally would see it as 3. Especially when you're talking about complaint-based, that's a difficult thing to do. And when you get to 5 dogs, I don't know what the definition of pack mentality is, because I'm not an animal psychologist, but I think you might be verging on something like that. I can't just basically 5 dogs are too many for me or any of my neighbors to have. I would be way more comfortable with 3. I can only imagine the discussions you had in that group trying to come up with a number. I'm sure they were vigorous.
Colleen has his hand up.
Chair.
Tell him to go.
Go ahead.
There was a fair amount of discussion about that number, and I think 5 is perhaps one of the larger numbers. Like when you look at surrounding communities, Brookings, Aberdeen, Rapid City, they varied, I think, anywhere from 3 to 6. There was weight restrictions. I think some of them maybe contained breed restrictions. It's really hard, but I think what we ultimately settled on, and maybe it was Todd and I and Matt, and then Dr. Mark Reeb and a few of those folks. What we ultimately settled on is we thought that the nuisance statutes would probably suffice to control that issue. So, for instance, if there is a sanitary issue or a noise issue, we could also fall back on the nuisance issue or ordinances.
Yeah, to give a little additional context there, originally, I think kind of the instinct of the Animal Control Board initially was to say, well, why have a cap? Let's just enforce the potential negative externalities of having too many pets, feces in your neighbor's yard, dogs running at large, nuisance ordinances, noise ordinances, odors, etc. So there's all these other tools that you can use to police the externalities. So maybe we just don't set a number, but there was some pushback to that. So this is the number we settled on, that the group settled on.
This is Ford again. I can certainly see relying on the nuisance ordinance if it weren't complaint-based. But when it's complaint-based, that throws a whole different level of interaction with your neighbors, people you have to live with, into it. Complaint-based, while you can always say to someone, you have the right to complain, and that's certainly a fact, an intellectual fact. But emotionally, there's a huge roadblock against doing that. And I just see it as overly burdensome to people, creating, I mean, right now it's 3, right? No more than 3? Isn't that what the ordinance says right now that you're crossing out?
Yeah, so technically right now, if you interpreted it that way, so there was some disagreement with whether or not when this was written, it was actually intended to be a 2-dog limit through the zoning ordinance. But long story short, yes, it can be interpreted to mean, as it's written today, that if you want to own more than 2 dogs, you have to get a conditional use and live in the ag zone.
And that, I doubt there have been many complaints about that, although we probably all know several people who are in violation of that, which is only an example of the fact that complaint-based doesn't really achieve what you're trying to achieve in this ordinance, which is providing a sanitary, safe environment for the animals and a quiet, peaceful residential area.
Liam, I see you have your hand up.
Let me respond briefly. First, Diana, I agree with you entirely. I don't think anybody should have more than 3 dogs, but from my own personal standpoint, but from the way the law is written, it's going to be complaint-based, whether it's 3 dogs, whether it's 2 dogs, whether it's 5 dogs, or whether it's 10 dogs, it's going to be complaint-based. And the combination of the 5 hard cap plus the externality, the feces, sanitary, noise at large, I feel like this probably satisfies it because it's going to be complaint-based regardless, right? And this we had a lot of discussion and some consternation about this particular issue. And when I reviewed other cities' statutes, ordinances, I could tell just by reading them that this is apparently an issue, regionally or perhaps probably nationally. There's a lot of discrepancy, oddly written statutes, you name it, strange carve-outs. So it's obviously a challenging issue, but I think that we can accomplish, unless we go to a patrol-based enforcement of code, which just really isn't practicable. I don't know any real solution to this. So the final comment, generally, I love the work, Matt. I think you did an excellent job. I think it really encapsulates in a very succinct way our discussions, which frequently were not succinct.
I just want to add one piece to that. As far as the complaint base goes, this isn't explicitly complaint based. It's just for practical purposes with the staffing levels. We don't have 15 code enforcement / animal control officers out there looking for municipal code violations. So most everything that we deal with from the city's perspective ends up being complaint based.
So could I certainly see all of those points. And yes, I certainly see that complaint-based is likely the way it will have to go. Is it possible to include in here some direction? I don't know if it's the right way to do it in an ordinance as to how a person goes about making a complaint so that people see the path, or could there see the path forward that would keep them anonymous? I mean, otherwise, there's really you have that uncertainty. I really need to file a complaint. These dogs are living five dogs in 10 square feet, and there's dog poop that hasn't been cleaned up for 2 weeks. How will I know my neighbor is not going to? For the benefit of the animals, I think people need to understand that they can make a complaint and there'll be some assurance of anonymity. So perhaps I would feel better about it if there was some way of including that in there, the process.
I agree 100%, and that makes for really bad neighbors getting worse.
This is Stacy. I just wanted to to just let everybody know that there is a way for somebody to get online and do a complaint form that comes right into code enforcement and to myself. And absolutely, we do not disclose any names. I believe a person can make that anonymously if they choose to do that, so they can go online, do that, so it wouldn't end up with neighbor wars. But absolutely, something like that, we would not release who made a complaint. So that would just be private information. So.
And I compliment you on that. But unless that information is out there for people to know, I did not know you could do that. If they don't have that information, they're not going to utilize that opportunity. If somehow, and it seems odd that I would ask something like that be included in an animal control ordinance. But as you all know, this can really raise Cain in a neighborhood with people. And if they would know the process, it might be very helpful. Then you could have 25 dogs. And if they had a way of complaining, if it wasn't being handled properly, everyone would be satisfied. So I'm just throwing that out there, food for thought. Communication is important. If you let people know how they can go about something, it's so much more comforting and settling, and people are so much more cooperative if they know what the process is. Right now, I don't know that most people who might want to take advantage of the process know what the process is.
Yeah, it's a good point, Diane. I think that we could certainly write something into ordinance, but as we, besides us 25 on this call or so, not a lot of people really dig into our ordinance. So I think what it comes down to is more of a public awareness of the channels that are available, because whether it's code enforcement issues, the police department, the animal control officer is actually housed in the police department. And so that's where the complaints typically end up for animal control issues. And so I think that just maybe making the public more aware that those avenues exist, and to know that it doesn't have to be, your name doesn't have to be tied to it. Now, obviously with these animal issues, it's pretty easy to figure out sometimes, I suppose, who's making the complaints. If your neighbor is the one that's mostly affected by whatever your animals are doing, they're probably the one that complained, but not necessarily. So, but anyway, there is that channel that exists, just a matter of maybe increasing some public awareness.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. This is Brandy. And maybe it could just be a PSA or some type of news flash just to get the information out there that that's available not only for animal control complaints, but any complaint that would go to code enforcement for it within the zoning ordinance. Is it specific to going straight to code enforcement, or?
I think it is. I think it comes in and then it goes to Brent as code enforcement officer, and then I think I'm carbon copied on it as well. But certainly we could look at that and get that more available, and hopefully in the future there will be more of a way for citizens to go online, be able to report things, and just have that anonymous or anonymity, so they can feel comfortable making those complaints.
No, I think that's a good discussion that we've had on the zoning, and I think it is apparent that something needs to change with our kennel definition, with the way it sits. So I appreciate all the hard work that subcommittee has done on that. So thank you for that, and thank you for presenting it today.
Yes, thanks, Matt, and sorry for just kind of throwing that on you. I really didn't give him a heads up.
No. I think I knew it was coming. Real quick, just a heads up, then if there's no suggested changes to the languages in front of you, I think what the next step will be, So the reason this was kind of an oddity where we're having to coordinate between two boards because, it's the animal control board that's kind of seeking the change, but the change they're seeking is currently governed by the zoning ordinance. So we're trying to facilitate both processes at the same time. So the animal control board has already approved what you see in front of you. And so at the next plan commission meeting, we'll propose the actual ordinance change, put it on the agenda, notice it, and then you'll have a chance to vote on it at that time. So.
Sounds good, thank you. Moving on the agenda is item 10. Is there any reason to go into executive session?
No.
All right, then item 11 is adjournment, so we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.